Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to the Down Under Bunker here in Sydney, Australia. On a scorching hot day here in Sydney, nothing better to do than to do a bit of Axis and Allies, and a bit of a different one today. Just playing the Pacific side of 1940. Thought I'd do something a little different. Maybe in the future I'll play just Europe. But I'm interested to see how this works. Obviously there are different rules. The territories that Russia would usually have are pretty much out of bounds. Mongolia, that is just a strict neutral country now. The Americans get more bonuses, so they'll be earning about $60 a turn. So that's more than they would be putting into the Pacific per turn if it was just a global game. So Japan will have to keep watch on America. Other than that, Japan has advantages of not having Russia to worry about up north and in China. No one can reinforce the British in India from Europe, so a few bonuses for Japan there. But very keen to see how this plays out. Should be a quick game as well, considering it's just Pacific. Yeah, so keen to get into it. Haven't played Axis and Allies for a while, had other things to do, but back to it now, and I'll see you after round one. We've finished round one, moving on to round two now, and this game plays really quick. You've got 10-15 minutes for the Japanese turn, then 10-15 minutes for the rest of the Allies. It does go pretty quick. And already moving on to round two. So take you through the round. Start with the Japanese, where they did their standard J1 attack, taking French Indochina, taking out the British battleship in 37, losing a cruiser in the process though. Moving into China in the north and in the south, but the Chinese were able to take Hunan back with pretty good force. The Chinese are looking pretty strong at the moment, especially backed up by a couple British infantry there. Although the Japanese do have reinforcements coming, especially because they don't have to worry about any Russians. So there are a few differences with Pacific. Obviously the Japanese don't have to worry about Russians doing things. But also, next turn the Americans are collecting $55, and all of that is going in the Pacific. Usually in global it would be split between Pacific and Atlantic, but $55 a turn into the Pacific is quite a lot. Only had 17 this turn for the Americans, so they just bought destroyer, a couple ground units, moving their fleet into Hawaii, not moving any ships down to Australia, but a couple planes will do. Japanese sending a destroyer from the Caroline Islands down off the coast of Sydney, destroying the Anzac destroyer, but luckily for the Anzacs, their destroyer hit back, meaning they were able to take a guy to Dutch New Guinea to take their bonus. So the Anzacs collected a whopping $20 for them. So that's quite good for Anzacs. They'll be able to build a few land units to defend Sydney. The British came and took Sumatra, just trying to annoy the Japanese. And also moving forward, as I said, into China, building more ground units, some mobile units, so trying to move quickly. The Japanese did take the Philippines, and losing 2 infantry on the ground battle, a dent to the battleship in the sea, so not too bad, but losing 2 infantry does hurt for round 2 conquest of the Money Islands. So that's all that happened in round 1, and looking forward to round 2. Seeing how the Japanese can spread out some more. I'll see you then. Well, round 2 is done, and things are starting to get a little bit interesting. The Japanese now have obviously spread out to the islands. The Chinese and British are planning something. The Australians having an interesting build, and the Americans doing stuff as well. So, lots to talk about in this round. Let's start with the Japanese though, where in China, pushed up north with a few units there and a fighter as well, and the Chinese have retaliated appropriately, trying to just hold up that little force there. Down south in Hunan, the Japanese stormed into there, taking out the Chinese infantry with a whole help of fighters and tactical bombers, only taking a couple hits there for Chinese 5 infantry. Backing up with more infantry and an anti-aircraft gun, that's important, and even more infantry coming down as well. Buying a tank on the mainland and 3 in China, and also a factory in French Indochina. So they're trying to do stuff in China, try and get maybe 6 tanks a turn in there. India was bombed this turn, although 1 bomber was shot down by the anti-aircraft gun, but still did 7 damage. The British repaired 2 and built 5 men, while putting a whole bunch of stuff in Yunnan. 7 infantry there for the British, about 8 for the Chinese. Some mechanised units for the British as well. So French Indochina, Thailand is potentially in trouble. For the islands, we have the Japanese putting a whole bunch of stuff in Java, taking Borneo. Sumatra was taken last turn, but this turn Japanese submarine came and took out the transport, and then a British destroyer came and took out the submarine. So British are down to 1 ship. The Australians going with an interesting build, a bomber, trying something else out. The thought behind it was they could reach any of these islands, and like that transport there, they can just take out an undefended transport that the Japanese have sitting there. So interesting to see how that goes. They also bought a destroyer, but those planes could easily come and take out the whole Australian Navy, and they'd be in a world of pain. Caroline Islands were taken this turn. Americans not feeling the pressure as this whole fleet moves out of the way. So the only stuff that can hit it is that and the bomber over here and maybe a couple more planes. And the Americans also building transports and an aircraft carrier, a couple destroyers as well. So the game heating up in the sea, and the mainland is going to be a very interesting battle on round 3. We're now at the end of round 3, about to start round 4, and the Japanese have had a pretty bad round. A few things not going their way, so we'll go through those very quickly. Over here in Hawaii, the Americans have brought down their fleet, half of their fleet to there, the other half going down to Queensland, seeing if they can bait a Japanese naval attack into there. The Americans building more ground units and transports to bring across as well, while bringing more transport back to San Francisco to try and get more units across, most likely to the Money Islands and then the Philippines and so forth. The Anzacs finding themselves with only a minor factory, only building 3 units a turn, is not enough for them. They saved a bit of cash this round. They did buy artillery tank and destroyer this round. Transport in fact, because they sacrificed their transport in trying to take Java, failed in that but got very close. The bomber didn't do anything this round, but next turn it can take out any undefended transport that the Japanese might leave, and you can also help out on an assault on Java. So that bomber could become more important than the Anzac originally thought. The Japanese losing 2 transports undefended this round. The Americans taking Celebes, and that submarine could cause more problems than you originally think. There are no destroyers in range because the Japanese had to send blockers to stop the fleet from the Caroline Islands getting into mainland Japan. The Japanese did build an aircraft carrier, bought some fighters across for that as well, so now they've got 4 carriers in the sea. On China, in China, the worst part of their round, I would say, the Japanese had to back out of Hunan. The Chinese did come and take that. The Japanese lost 3 tanks and the anti-aircraft gun in there, the British taking that. The one good thing that happened to them was 3 Chinese guys attacked the Japanese guy in Kangsu, and that failed. But other than that, the Japanese were looking pretty dismal in the mainland, although Yunnan could be taken this next turn, and if that British force gets taken out, then I think the Japanese will have a good chance again. So that's the main things from round 3. It's definitely heating up. The Money Islands are definitely becoming the main battleground for the Japanese. So see how they respond to the Allied aggression on round 4. It's now the end of round 4 and the Japanese continue to find themselves in a world of pain. The Allies are really closing in now on Japan. On the Japanese turn, they tried going into Yunnan, and you can see how that turned out. Ended up having to retreat with a couple of artillery and a tank left. The Chinese getting 6 out of 8 infantry to hit, which is quite remarkable for them, but not so much for the Japanese. Up north, the Japanese had controlled most of it before the Chinese and British pushed up north, and now it's looking very bare. The Chinese even pushing to the coast now, and Japan not having much to stop them. So all of this stuff now can be controlled by China. It's not looking good for the Japanese in the mainland, although they did manage to take Malaya without loss. So $5 off the Anzac for national bonuses and $3 off the British. So not all terrible, but not the best round. The British buying themselves an infantry and a tank with only $9 to spend. Now they've only got 6 for next round, so they're really lacking in money. The Japanese losing another transport to the British tactical bomber in 37, undefended. So now the Japanese are down to 2 transports, one in the Philippines, one on Japan. Japanese did buy a couple more destroyers, but their fleet is not looking too good. Once you get past the 4 aircraft carriers, there is not much else there. The Americans sent their sub out to Sea Zone 41, and I'm sure they'll start convoying Japan soon. Anzac took Java away from the Japanese with help from the bomber, which is now thoroughly defended by the Anzacs. They moved pretty much all that they could to the Northern Territory to defend that one bomber. Anzac buying himself more boats and another dude, and saving a bit more money as well. Celebes was kept this turn by the Americans. The Japanese sent their transport to Malaya, not the Celebes. Could be a bad decision, but that is pretty much $8 that they threw away there just to gain 3. The Americans brought their whole fleet down to Queensland now, bringing another one, a very small one though, down again, but multiple transports, multiple units, and then they brought more units and transports. So Philippines could be under threat this next round by this American fleet, and maybe backed up by the Anzacs. So not looking good for Japan, but this game can swing in a matter of seconds. So stay tuned, and I'll see you after round 5. Well, round 6 is done, and are the Japanese getting close to being done as well? Well, you could think so after this round. Japanese not having the best of rounds again, but I'll still show you what happened. So on the Japanese turn, they put everything here in the Philippines, brought down another transport load of stuff, took the Celebes back, but were unable to take Java, meaning they couldn't get the bonus of the Money Islands and those $4 as well. So losing $9 there, but they just didn't have another transport for it. The destroyer coming out to destroy the American submarine that was in Sea Zone 41. But the big news from the round, the Japanese took on Wei, destroying that British force, but you might notice that the Japanese have a significantly reduced air force. That is all that's left on the ground. Still got 8 planes in the ocean, but pretty much half of their air force was lost in taking out that British fleet. not fleet, land ground units. And they needed to take Anhui, otherwise the Chinese were going to place units there for sure, putting their factory under threat, and that's not good for them. So they sacrificed 5 or so planes just to keep that tank alive to take Anhui. The Chinese spread out, taking more territories back from the Japanese, holding the Burma Road, so they're placing 5 infantry next round. But good news for the Japanese, the British tried attacking Shan State, killed 3 tanks and an artillery, but lost pretty much their whole force in the process. That is all the British have left now, so potentially Calcutta is under threat, which could help the Japanese a lot. Now, I'm going to point out the elephant in the room, this massive face-off with the 2 fleets. And the Americans leaving a couple blockers to protect Australia, particularly Queensland. The Australians building themselves an infantry, artillery and a transport, getting ready to transport stuff. Because the Americans broke the Japanese blocker, now presenting themselves as a threat to the mainland with about 6 transport loads of stuff that can hit it, 4 from the Caroline Islands, 2 from Hawaii, 3 transport loads of units bought this turn by the Americans, so they are really closing in for the win now. And the worst case scenario for the Allies is they take the Philippines this round, because Japan has got to get back and defend their homeland. So not looking good at all for the Japanese right now. So this next round could be the last round, you never know. But the Japanese will undoubtedly be buying units to protect Japan, which means that China is pretty much at a loss now, because they can't be buying 6 tanks there and enough units to protect Japan. So, very interesting situation, looking like an Allied victory, but you never know in this game. So stay tuned for the end of round 6. So we've come to the end of round 6 now, and there is a glimmer of hope for the Japanese. What a difference one battle can make. Japanese went into the Caroline Islands sea zone, and that is the result of that. The Americans throwing everything they could at it, scrambled the tactical bomber off the island, and still the Japanese survived with 4 full carriers, couple cruisers, couple damaged battleships. So massive blow to the Americans. The Americans though have responded by building a insta-fleet and bringing back their stuff from Hawaii. And you may notice that the Japanese have no transports. Absolutely none on the board, so they weren't worried about keeping Hawaii. The Americans knew they could keep that. The Anzac came and took the Philippines. That's at least 2 rounds that they're going to hold that. Australia took Java as well, with help from the bomber. So that's another, probably even 3 rounds at least they're holding that. So the Japanese are going to be down a bit of money. The Americans get their national bonus for having the Philippines, so could change a little bit, but I'm sure this next round the Japanese will be buying transports. On the mainland, the Chinese continue to really push the Japanese back. Japanese now only got 1 infantry on the mainland and 7 tanks, and the Chinese continue to destroy their tanks without fail every single round. Building nothing in the Kiangsu factory this round, deciding they needed ships. The tanks in French Indochina were built this round. That is all that was built on the mainland. British only buying 1 infantry. They're really lacking in money, but they did destroy a Japanese destroyer for the price of their cruiser. It's very interesting now, with the Japanese having this situation. Although those damaged battleships can't get repaired anywhere close, they're going to take at least 2 turns to get to Japan to repair them, so could the Allies try to take them out, and how will the Japanese respond to the Anzac aggression and the Americans' new fleet? Find out right after this. Round 7 is now done, and the Allies have an opening. Not a massive opening, but you never know in this game. Japanese are still holding on, but didn't have the best of rounds again. As you can see, the Japanese have resorted back to the Philippines, not being able to repair their battleships because they didn't own the Caroline Islands. They can't repair them this turn because the Anzacs snuck in last round to take the Philippines. So they'll have to wait till, not next turn even, they'll have to wait until round 9 before they can even repair those. Not looking good for their fleet there. The Anzacs are just trying to be a nuisance. They had a surviving transport from Sea Zone 42. Came and took Sumatra, that's $4 away from the Japanese right there. Japanese are only earning $45. They dropped 13 IPC production last round, and they're looking like they're going to drop another 10. So they're really on the decline now, and if the Americans were to take Iwo Jima, for example, and start strap bombing the factory, I think I'd call the game there. The Japanese put a blocker out in Sea Zone 16 thinking that their mainland was safe, but they forgot about the bomber in the Caroline Islands. It was able to take out the destroyer that was there. Unfortunately for the Americans, got destroyed in the process, but that, as I said, makes an opening for 5 transport worth of stuff to hit the mainland, which means more money off the Chinese offensive for the Japanese. Speaking of China, the Japanese pushed further into Yunnan, and not up north this time, but as you can see, the Chinese reclaimed more territory that was lost. The Chinese earned $15 this turn. That is 5 more infantry, compared to the Japanese probably placing about 2 or 3 tanks this round. So not looking good for Japan there. The British, with their 2 infantry a turn at the moment, just trickling them out, maybe trying to take Malaya back. And the Japanese really couldn't stop them, because diverting those tanks from French Indochina means China will be massive. The Anzacs splashed out with their cash and bought themselves an aircraft carrier. Interesting choice there, maybe just putting more pressure on the Japanese Navy. Japan can't be buying Navy this next round if they want to defend their mainland, so yeah, not looking good for them. Obviously don't have much stuff, bought 3 transports for them, but that's not going to help them if the Americans decide to come in. The Americans continuing to buy fleet to recover what was lost, and a couple more infantry artillery transports. So that is the end of round 7. Very interesting part of the game. I think the Allies are going to win, but we'll keep playing and see how this one turns out. So I'll see you after round 8. Well, it's the end of round 8, and that is going to be the game. The Japanese have decided to surrender after the Allies continue to push them back no matter what they do. So the Allies have won after 8 rounds, but I think the real devastating part for the Japanese was China. The Chinese continued to push the Japanese back, and I think that is why the Japanese have decided to call it quits. The British probably able to hold on to their mainland despite all those tanks heading towards India. The Anzacs continue just to annoy the Japanese by taking islands, destroying a few Navy units, and the Americans, well, they built a naval base up in the Aleutian Islands, so now they can hit Japan, and the only way for Japan to stop that is by bringing back their whole navy, and that kind of ruins their whole game. So, decided to call it quits now. Not 100% that if we kept playing, the Allies would have won, but I'm pretty sure, maybe 95% sure that the Allies would have won if we kept playing. So that will be it. Thanks for tuning in, everyone, and have to maybe just do Europe next time, but decide that later. But thanks for tuning in, and Down Under Bunker signing off.